sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night. Has House of the Dragon been faithful to the books? What did they get right? And what did they get wrong? So first things first, HBO released a new clip for season 2, and it's a scene with Rhaenys and Daemon. And Daemon is basically chastising her for not killing the Greens when she had the chance. And he says if she did, Luke would still be alive. So I'm going to talk about this because the Rhaenys scene is definitely not in the books. And at Aegon's coronation, Sunfire, his dragon, is there. But before we get into the new scene, we're going to talk about what George R.R. Martin said because he was flaming people that have been adapting books. George R.R. Martin posted this and it caused an uproar in the community. Everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take great stories and make them their own. It does not seem to matter whether the source material was written by Stan Lee, Charles Dickens, Ian Fleming, Ursula K. He named all these authors, including J.R. Tolkien and Mark Twain. But he also said, or well, anyone. No matter how major a writer it is, no matter how great the book, there always seems to be someone on hand who thinks he can do better, eager to take the story and improve on it. The book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they are saying something profound. Then they make the story their own. They never make it better, though. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. So George, not even gonna lie, went off. The conclusion I reached from what he said is he's not talking about House of the Dragon. He's not talking about Ryan Condal. Ryan Condal is a fan of these books. He's not just like a Hollywood writer trying to put a graffiti over a Picasso. This is a guy that loves this world. This is what George has previously said about Ryan Condal.
It's great to have Ryan, who's a great writer and someone who really knew my world. He's going to do his best to remain faithful to it.
And what George posted about, this is something that we see quite often. People get these beloved pieces of art, these stories that are already loved by so many. Instead of saying, how can I adapt this? They say, how can I make it better? And it's never better. Me personally, I was pissed at the way Netflix writers adapted The Witcher. I can't even watch it. It's so bad. I was also pissed at the travesty that Game of Thrones turned into, but also, like Game of Thrones, D&D, they didn't have Winds of Winter. They didn't have Dream of Spring. And it's 5 years after the last episode of Game of Thrones, and we still don't have it. And I don't want to talk about it. It's been 10 years. I don't want to talk about it. But let's talk about how faithful House of the Dragon has been or hasn't been. Firstly, it's important to understand that House of the Dragon is an adaptation of Fire and Blood. However, Fire and Blood is not a traditional novel. Fire and Blood is a history book. It's a book that gives several accounts from several POVs of the happenings during this time period. And oftentimes, the reports conflict with each other, POV to POV. So let's talk about the basics before we get into it. Aegon's crown. One of the things that pissed me off so bad from season 1 of House of the Dragon was Aegon's crown. Aegon's crown is Aegon the Conqueror's crown. And I don't know, what the design choice of the crown, I don't know what the show crown was about. But in the books, Aegon the Conqueror's crown looks completely different and way better. It's a circlet of Valyrian steel with these big square cut rubies. It's Aegon's crown. Those big square cut rubies represent the opulence, the unimaginable wealth of House Targaryen. And the show version just wasn't doing it for me. It just wasn't. Rhaenyra's crown is also different in the books. She wore the crown of her father, Viserys, and her grandfather, Jaehaerys, a simple yellow gold band with 7 gemstones on it. The show's version has the Targaryen sigil on it and the sigil of the great houses, and I like it. It's whatever. It's whatever. I just couldn't with Aegon's crown. Come on. One of the things I did like is the Iron Throne. The Iron Throne, of course, changed from Game of Thrones to include more swords, but in the books, the Iron Throne is enormous. You have to climb up steps to get into it. Have you ever seen the Iron Throne? The barbs along the back, the ribbons of twisted steel, the jagged ends of swords and knives, all tangled up and melted. It is not a comfortable seat, sir. Aerys cut himself so often men took to calling him King Scab. And Maegor the Cruel was murdered in that chair. By that chair, to hear some tell it. It's not a seat where a man can rest at ease. I think House of the Dragon got a lot closer to accurate than Game of Thrones. None of these changes, though, none of these changes really bother me. Aegon's crown, I just thought was funny. These are aesthetic things, I don't care. But let's talk about book changes to the actual story. Let's talk about Daemon, because it's low-key annoying at this point. Disliking Daemon, demonizing Daemon is low-hanging fruit, babes. He's a complex character. He's a gray character. And this quote is right from George R.R. Martin's pen. House Targaryen has produced both great men and monsters. Prince Daemon was both. In his day, there was not a man so admired, so beloved, and so reviled in all Westeros. He was made of light and darkness in equal parts. To some, he was a hero. To others, the blackest of villains. You don't get quotes written about you like this without getting bloody and dirty. People were up in arms last season because they were mad that Daemon was getting portrayed as a villain. But I think, and I don't care who gets mad at this, he is a villain. But he's also a hero. He's an anti-hero. I didn't really like them killing Rhea Royce, though. I didn't like them making Daemon kill his wife. Daemon was forced to marry Rhea Royce when he was 16 years old. Their marriage was unconsummated. They didn't like each other. They actually hated each other. But in Fire and Blood, she was not killed by Daemon. Daemon was in the stepstones when she died. She fell from her horse and she was in bed for 9 days. When she finally felt well enough to walk, she fell dead. But if Daemon had any culpability in her death of those 9 days in bed, she had plenty of time to snitch on him or anyone that was involved in her death. I don't know why the writers changed this, but at the same time, I don't think it fundamentally changes anything about his character, because at the end of the day, this is the man that's responsible for blood and cheese. I almost think the reasoning is, if a man can do the blood and cheese thing, nothing else he does could be worse. It's just another drop in the bucket. He's a violent man. But the part they forget is that he's equal parts light and dark. And I think that's something that people who stand him don't truly understand about him. There's no lines he won't cross. There's no moral compass. He's a true Targaryen, the dragon. He will take what is his with fire and blood. He will take it. He's the kind of Targaryen that embraces exactly what he is, and he owns it, and I respect him for it. If you look at him in contrast with Daenerys, Daenerys knows she's a Targaryen. She embraces it. But she also wants to be better than her ancestors. She wants to build something better than what came before her. Daemon doesn't want to be better than his ancestors. He wants to be them. He wants to make sure that the realms of gods and men understand that he's a Targaryen and he will take what is his, and there's no line that he won't cross, and it is what it is.
Give me Rhaenyra to take to wife, and we will return the House of the Dragon to its proper glory.
The scene they also showed with Daemon and Rhaenyra and Daemon choking her, or the new one of Rhaenyra being scared of him. Listen, he's a violent man. He's a violent man. Water's wet. I'm working on a video completely diving into the depths of Daemon's character and characters like him all throughout literature, but that's for another day. Another change that I'm not sure why they did was Laenor's storyline. Laenor Valerian's storyline was a bit of a stretch. It was a bit of a stretch. First off, in the books, Joffrey Lonmouth is killed by Criston Cole. In the books, he is. But it does not go down like this. In the books, the wedding happens and there's tourneys and feasts. And Crispin kills Joffrey during the tourney, which makes way more sense than a Kingsguard beating to death the Lord of House Lonmouth in the middle of a party at the Red Keep, with no consequences to those actions at all. At tourney, you've entered the list, you know the risk. Besides it not being logical, it doesn't really change the story. He died. Crispin is vilified even more. So they accomplished Joff dying and bad Crispin bad with adding a death at a wedding, which seems to be the theme for this world. But Laenor's death or escape, I didn't like that. I didn't like it at all. I think it conflicts with hundreds of years of dragon lore that we know. And I want to talk about it. So in Fire and Blood, it says that Sir Carl Corey kills Laenor, and it's out of jealousy. They're quarreling loudly, and he's killed. It says that Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, came to collect his body and put a bounty on Sir Carl Corey's head. And it's actually Laenor's funeral where Aemon claims Vhagar and loses his eye. Mushroom blamed Daemon for killing Laenor, despite there being no evidence of this. However, I have always thought that Daemon paid Sir Carl to kill Laenor, because I think that's very much something that Daemon would do. The big point of contention for me in all of this is Sea Smoke. Sea Smoke is not going to take another rider as long as Laenor is alive, and that is confirmed by hundreds of years of dragon lore. Sea Smoke leaving Driftmark and making his lair at Dragonstone was confirmation that Laenor died in the books. I guess that's why they wrote Daemon killing off Rhea, since they didn't want him to kill Laenor. But whatever. So now let's talk about it. Let's talk about the clip that was posted of Rhaenys and Daemon. I liked the melee scene in episode 9 of season 1. Like, visually, I liked it, but I didn't like it. I love melees. I love Rhaenys, but this was Aegon's moment, bro. And I know I'm always like team black, rah, 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 team black, team black. But just because I'm team black, I still value all these characters and what they bring to the story. And this was Aegon's moment, and they took it from him. Now we are out here fighting for Rhaenys' life in the storyline. I think the writers made a mistake in not involving Sunfire in Aegon's coronation, and instead had Meleys and Rhaenys bust through the floorboards. I watched the behind the episode, and I know why they did it, but again, it's the logic. Rhaenys could have killed them all. Yes, she could have. But in the books, the Meleys and Rhaenys are not in King's Landing when Aegon is crowned in the books. And I know you want a big, powerful scene for them, but I don't think you should do that at the expense of Sunfire and Aegon and at the expense of the story. Aegon had the crown. Aegon had the sword. He had the city. But where is his dragons? In the books, his dragon was with him, and he flew him around the city. And Sunfire is rumored to be the most beautiful dragon of all time in the known world, and in the first season we saw him from a distance once. If it's gonna be a green episode, make it a green episode. Include Sunfire. That pissed me off, I'm not gonna lie. But it's like Meleys and Rhaenys at the same time, so I was kind of conflicted. But to see Rhaenys getting painted in this new scene like she's stupid, like she could have killed them all when she had the chance, is weird, because Rhaenys is our Davos. Rhaenys is our moral compass. Rhaenys knows that the world is bigger than her, and she's always acted in this way, including when she was passed over for the throne. Even though she had the better claim, she didn't try to fight Viserys for the throne. She was ever faithful to her king and her cousin. I think she's honorable. I think she doesn't want to become a kinslayer. No man is more accursed than a kinslayer. I think it's the same madness that led Ned to think he could spare Cersei and her children. Rhaenys isn't going to do it. She's not going to kill her cousin's wife and children in front of the entire city of King's Landing. And because she didn't do it, it's going to cost her, but it would probably have cost her if she did. Just like Ned's decision cost him. However, now in season 2, Daemon is blaming her because if it was Daemon, there would be no story, because we'd be sweeping the ashes of the small folk, the Greens, and the other bystanders that got in the way off of the floor of the dragon pit if it was Daemon. So there's that. Aside from Laenor, Daemon's wife, and Rhaenys, most of the deviations have been small. A lot of what we see on the screen is completely made up because these events aren't fleshed out in the books, so they do have a lot of room for the writers to fill in the blanks, and I do think they've been doing a good job for the most part. I mean, besides what I've mentioned, they have been faithful to the books, but only time will tell. So bring on season 2 of House of the Dragon and let me know what you think. Is it faithful or not? And also, just to let you guys know, Direwolf City will be back Mondays at 9:30 starting June the 17th. So when House of the Dragon comes back on June the 16th, we will be there to answer all your burning questions live Monday nights at 9:30. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone that supports my channel. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.